Welcome to Cassandra Revenge Stories, where quiet women turn betrayal into reckoning.
My name is Darlene Kavanaugh. I'm 39 years old. On a Sunday morning last April, I sat at a brunch table in Richmond, Virginia, and watched my mother-in-law slide a laminated piece of paper across the white tablecloth toward me. The paper was warm from the printer. It had my name on it in bold type at the top, followed by a weekly schedule of chores for her home, labeled Darlene's Duties. 2 minutes before that, she'd announced she was gifting a $410,000 townhouse to my sister-in-law, Lisa. She gave Lisa a home. She gave me a cleaning rotation. But that laminated sheet isn't what broke me. What broke me was what I found when I went back to the books. And if you've ever been the person who holds everything together while someone else hands out the rewards, you need to hear what happened next. Welcome back to our channel. This is where we tell the stories that don't get told at family dinners, the ones about the people who gave everything and got handed a schedule instead of a thank you. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell, because stories like Darlene's, they're the ones that stay with you. Drop a comment if you've ever been the one doing the work while someone else got the credit. Now, to understand how I ended up at that brunch table, staring at a laminated list of chores with my jaw locked and my hands folded in my lap, you have to go back to the very beginning. You have to go back to who I was before the Kavanaughs. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment off Broad Street with my father, Ray. Just the two of us. My mother left when I was 4, and my father never once spoke badly about her. He just got quieter. He worked maintenance at a hotel downtown, and on Saturday mornings he'd sit at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and his watch. His grandfather's watch. A Timex with a cracked crystal and a leather band he'd replaced 3 times. He'd wind it, even though it kept time on its own. It was a ritual. Something about touching the thing that connected him to the people who came before. My father taught me numbers, not in any formal way. He'd bring home receipts from the hotel, and we'd sit together and add them up. He showed me how to balance a checkbook when I was 11. He told me that numbers don't lie, that people do, but numbers sit still and tell you exactly what happened if you know how to read them. I loved that. I loved the certainty of it. I went to Virginia Commonwealth on a partial scholarship and studied accounting. I graduated with honors. I passed my CPA exam on the first try and got my certified fraud examiner credential 2 years later. By 24, I was working forensic accounting for a mid-sized firm here in Richmond, the kind of work where you spend your days reading bank statements and transaction logs, looking for the lie hiding between the lines. I met Kevin Kavanaugh when I was 25. He was 27, just starting a roofing company with a truck, 2 employees, and the kind of confidence that made you believe the business was already successful. He was tall. He had rough hands and kind eyes, and he listened when I talked about amortization schedules, or at least he pretended to, which at the time felt like the same thing. We got married a year later in a small ceremony at St. Benedict's. My father walked me down the aisle in his one good suit, and when he handed me off, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "You don't owe anyone everything, baby girl. Remember that." I smiled. I didn't listen. I was in love, and love made me generous in all the ways my father warned me about. Kevin's mother, Gloria Kavanaugh, was at that wedding in a lavender dress and a hat that cost more than my dress. She hugged me at the door. Her perfume smelled expensive. The hug felt like inventory. She was assessing me. I know that now. At the time, I thought she was warming up to me. I thought the coolness in her eyes was just how some mothers looked at the women who married their sons. I thought I could earn my way in. That was my first mistake, thinking warmth was something you could earn from someone who never intended to offer it. The first year of our marriage, Gloria gave Kevin and his sister Lisa matching checks for $30,000, down payment money. Kevin was thrilled. He showed me the check at dinner. His face lit up like a kid's, And I felt grateful too. $30,000 was more money than my father had ever seen in one place. I started mentally redesigning the kitchen of the little ranch house we'd put an offer on. New countertops. Maybe a tile backsplash. 3 days later, I was at Gloria's house helping clean up after a family dinner. I was at the kitchen sink, my hands in warm, soapy water, and Gloria came up beside me and said in a voice so low only I could hear it, "That money is Kavanaugh money, for Kavanaugh blood, so don't go redecorating on my dime." She didn't look at me when she said it. She was drying a glass. Then she walked away and poured herself more wine and laughed at something Lisa said in the living room. I stood there with my hands in the water and felt the warmth drain out of me from the chest down. I didn't tell Kevin. That's the part that matters. That's the part that set the next 14 years in motion. I swallowed it. I dried the dishes. I drove home. And when Kevin asked how the evening was, I said, "Your mom was great." Because my father had taught me that being quiet and helpful was how women survived, and I believed him, because surviving was all he'd ever managed to do, and I loved him too much to see the limitation in the lesson. Kevin's roofing company grew, not fast, but steady. He went from 2 employees to 6, then 10. He got a contract with a property management group, then a commercial client. The business needed books, and Kevin didn't have the budget for a full-time bookkeeper. So I did them. Every weekend. Saturday mornings, after the girls went to their activities, I'd sit at the kitchen table with my laptop and reconcile Kevin's business accounts. Payroll, invoicing, vendor payments, tax prep, quarterly filings. I did it all for free. The same work I billed clients $150 an hour for during the week. I did for my husband's company for nothing, because that's what family does. That's what I told myself. That's what Gloria told Kevin. Darlene's got the books, doesn't she? That's her contribution. Her contribution. As if I were a vendor. As if love came with a deliverable. Our first daughter, Maisie, was born in year 2. Josephine, who we called Josie, came 3 years later. I nursed babies and balanced ledgers. I tracked receivables at 2 a.m. with a sleeping infant on my chest. I caught a $3,000 billing error in year 3 that would have cost Kevin a client. He thanked me. He genuinely thanked me. And I held on to that thank you like oxygen because it was rare and real, and it came from him. Not from the family that never seemed to notice I existed except when something needed doing. Year 4. I took the girls for their annual checkup. The pediatrician's office had a new intake form. I filled it out and noticed the emergency contact section. It didn't list me. It listed Gloria Kavanaugh with the notation, grandmother and primary decision maker. I asked the receptionist who had changed it. She checked the file and said Mrs. Kavanaugh had called 3 months ago and updated the records. She'd told them she was the primary caregiver. I sat in that waiting room with Maisie on my lap and Josie pulling at my sleeve, and I felt something I couldn't name. It wasn't anger exactly. It was more like the feeling of reaching for a step in the dark and finding nothing there. The ground I thought I was standing on, it just wasn't there. Gloria hadn't told me, hadn't told Kevin. She'd simply called the doctor and reclassified herself as the person in charge of my children's medical decisions. I changed it back. I didn't make a scene. I filled out new paperwork and put my name back where it belonged and drove home and made dinner and helped Maisie with her reading and put Josie to bed. And I didn't tell Kevin, because the last time I'd mentioned something Gloria did, he'd sighed and said, "That's just Mom being Mom." And the conversation died in that sigh, the way conversations always died in our house when Gloria's name came up. Year 6. Lisa decided to go back to school for her master's degree. Gloria paid for it. $67,000, the full tuition for a program at a private university. Gloria announced it at Thanksgiving, beaming, and the whole table clapped. Lisa cried. Kevin hugged his mother. I smiled and passed the cranberry sauce. 2 weeks later, I told Kevin I wanted to attend a professional development conference in Charlotte. 3 days. It would keep my credentials current, and my firm was covering half the cost. Gloria called Kevin that night, not me, Kevin, and told him I should probably skip the professional development conference this year because Kevin's business needs watching. Kevin told me over breakfast. He didn't phrase it as Gloria's opinion. He phrased it as common sense. Maybe this year isn't the right time, Dar. The business needs you here. $67,000 for Lisa's education, 0 for mine. And I was the one with the credentials that kept his company solvent. I went to the conference anyway. It was the first time in 6 years I'd overruled Gloria through Kevin, and the silence I got from both of them for the week after felt like punishment. But something in me had shifted. A crack. Hairline, barely visible. But it was there. Year 8, Gloria started what she called the Kavanaugh Women's Weekend. Every October, she'd book a spa resort in the Shenandoah Valley. Gloria, Lisa, Kevin's Aunt Patricia, and 2 of Gloria's closest friends. They'd spend 3 days getting massages and drinking wine and posting photos on Facebook with captions like Kavanaugh Women Run Deep. I was never invited. Kevin told me it was a blood thing. Gloria told Kevin I understood. Neither of them asked me. The first year, I didn't care much. The second year, I noticed. The third year, my daughter Maisie, who was 9, looked at the photos on Gloria's Facebook page and asked me, "Mom, why don't you ever go on the spa trip?" I was chopping onions. I said, "It's a family thing, sweetheart." And my 9-year-old daughter looked at me with her father's eyes and said, "But your family." I put the knife down and went to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub and pressed my palms against my eyes until the burning stopped. Your family. My 9-year-old understood something that a grown woman had been denying for 8 years. Year 10. I was doing the quarterly close for Kevin's business on a Saturday afternoon. The girls were at a birthday party. Kevin was on a job site. I had the QuickBooks file open, running my standard reconciliation, and I saw it. A recurring line item I'd noticed before but never examined closely. GK Consulting, $4,200, monthly. It had been there for as long as I could remember, sitting in the expenses like a piece of furniture you stop seeing because it's always been in the same spot. I clicked on it. The payee was listed as GK Consulting LLC. The memo field was blank. There was no attached invoice, no contract, no scope of work. Just a recurring payment, $4,200, every single month. I felt my hands go cold, not because the number surprised me, but because it didn't. It had been there the whole time. I'd been looking at it for years, and I'd never questioned it because I'd been trained, slowly, deliberately, over a decade, not to question anything with Gloria's initials on it. I asked Kevin that evening. I kept my voice light. "Hey, what's GK Consulting? I see it in the books every month." He was watching football. He didn't look away from the screen. "Mom handles that stuff. She always has." He said it the way you'd describe weather. Unremarkable. Automatic. A fact of nature. GK, Gloria Kavanaugh, $4,200 a month. Paid from Kevin's roofing company to his mother. For consulting. I let the conversation end. I went back to the laptop after Kevin fell asleep. I opened the state business registry and typed in GK Consulting LLC, and what came back changed everything. No results, no tax ID, no business registration, no filing history, no record that GK Consulting had ever existed as a legal entity in the Commonwealth of Virginia or anywhere else. Gloria Kavanaugh had been collecting $4,200 a month from her own son's company for a business that didn't exist. I sat at that kitchen table at 11:40 at night, and I did what I do. What I've done every day for 15 years of professional life. I followed the money. I pulled the bank statements. Not just that month. Not just that year. All of them. 11 years of business account records from Kevin's company, statements I had personally filed and organized and maintained because I was the unpaid bookkeeper who kept this whole operation running. I opened a new spreadsheet. I labeled the first column Date, the second column Amount, the third column Cumulative Total, and I started entering numbers. January, year 1, 4,200. February, year 1, 4,200. March, April, May, every month. No exceptions, no holidays, no breaks. Not even the month Josie was born, when Kevin's revenue dipped and I'd quietly deferred my own student loan payment to keep the business payroll funded. That month, Gloria still collected her $4,200. I cross-referenced every GK Consulting payment against Gloria's personal bank deposits. Kevin's business account and Gloria's personal account were at the same bank. He'd set it up that way years ago, probably at her suggestion. The deposits matched. Every single one. $4,200 from Kevin's business, $4,200 into Gloria's personal account. Same day, every month, for 11 years. The cumulative total on my spreadsheet when I reached the final entry read $554,400. I stared at that number. I stared at it until the screen blurred. $554,000. Extracted from a business I had maintained for free. Paid to a consulting company that didn't exist. For services that were never rendered. By a woman who handed me a laminated cleaning schedule and told me to earn my place. I did the next thing a forensic accountant does. I analyzed the invoices. Except there were no invoices. Not a single one. In 11 years, Gloria had never produced a bill, a statement, a scope of work, a contract, or a deliverable of any kind. I checked the tax filings. Kevin's company had been deducting the GK Consulting payments as a business expense. Someone, and I knew who, had been claiming my unpaid bookkeeping hours as justification for the deduction. The company's tax returns listed consulting and bookkeeping services as the category for the GK payments. My labor, my free labor, was being used as cover for Gloria's extraction. That was the worse than you think. It wasn't just that Gloria was taking money from her son's company. She was using my work to do it. The hours I spent every weekend, the expertise I donated, the billing errors I caught, the tax returns I prepared, all of it was being attributed to a phantom company that funneled cash to a woman who wouldn't even invite me to a spa weekend. I built a 47-page reconciliation spreadsheet, payment dates, deposit dates, timing analysis showing the money moved within 24 hours every single month. A phantom invoice analysis demonstrating no GK Consulting entity existed in any state or federal database. A side-by-side comparison of the company's stated consulting expenses and the total absence of any evidence that consulting occurred. I did it on the same laptop where I'd once tracked the family's Christmas gift budget, the one where I kept a spreadsheet of what to buy each Kavanaugh family member so I wouldn't accidentally duplicate a gift. It was 2 a.m. when I finished. The house was dark. Kevin was asleep upstairs. My daughters were asleep down the hall, and I was sitting in the kitchen with my father's watch beside the laptop, the watch he'd left me along with a handwritten note that said, "You were always too generous, baby girl." He'd died 18 months earlier. Heart attack. Quick. No warning. The hospital called me at work, and by the time I got there, he was gone. He left me the watch and that note. Nothing else, because he'd never had anything else. He'd spent his whole life maintaining other people's buildings and raising me alone and being quiet and helpful because that's how he survived. And I'd carried that lesson into a family that used it against me. I whispered something to myself at that table. I said it out loud, to the dark kitchen, to my father's watch, to no one. I've spent 14 years doing her son's books for free while she invoiced me $4,200 a month for doing nothing. And I'm the one she hands a cleaning schedule. I closed the laptop. I went upstairs. I lay down next to my husband and stared at the ceiling and felt something settle in my chest like a stone sinking to the bottom of a lake. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. Something colder. Recognition. I recognized the shape of what had been done to me, and for the first time in 14 years, I didn't look away from it. My father had been dead for 18 months, and I'd been grieving alone because Kevin deferred to Gloria on all emotional matters, and Gloria had told the family that my sadness was theatrical. That word, theatrical. As if losing your only parent was a performance. As if the man who wound his watch every Saturday morning and taught me to read numbers was a prop in a scene I was staging for attention. No one in the Cavano family had sent me a card. No one had called. Lisa had texted a single heart emoji the day of the funeral and never mentioned my father again. Kevin had held me the first night and then, within a week, started parroting Gloria's line that I needed to move forward and not make the girls sad. I had been drowning in that family, and now I had the numbers to prove it. But I didn't act. Not yet. Because here's the thing about forensic accounting, about what I do for a living. You don't present a case until the case is complete. You don't move until you're certain that every number is verified, every trail is documented, every possible objection has been anticipated and neutralized. Gloria would deny it. She'd spin it. She'd cry. She'd turn Kevin against me. She'd tell the family I was unstable, jealous, theatrical. She'd do what she always did, rewrite the story with herself as the victim. I needed something I couldn't manufacture. I needed independent verification. And then Vanessa called. Vanessa Cole, Kevin's ex-girlfriend. They'd dated for 2 years before I came along. Gloria had loved Vanessa. Loved her. Photos of Vanessa still hung in Gloria's hallway 3 years into my marriage. Gloria used to compare us at family dinners, not overtly, but in the way a woman like Gloria does, mentioning Vanessa's cooking, Vanessa's figure, Vanessa's easy personality. I'd hated Vanessa without ever meeting her. She was the ghost of the daughter-in-law Gloria actually wanted. 3 years ago, Gloria had hired Vanessa as her personal bookkeeper. I'd found that out at a family dinner and nearly choked on my water. Vanessa, the ex-girlfriend, managing Gloria's finances. Kevin didn't see the problem. Gloria smiled at me across the table that night with the particular warmth of a woman who knows she's won a round you didn't know you were playing. So when Vanessa's number appeared on my phone on a Tuesday afternoon, I assumed it was a wrong number or a trap. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, the part that reads numbers instead of feelings, told me to pick up. Darlene, this is Vanessa Cole. I know this is strange. I need to talk to you about Gloria's books. We met at a coffee shop in Carytown, neutral ground. Vanessa was smaller than I'd imagined, with short hair and steady eyes, and an energy that reminded me of the women in my office, professional, alert, measuring everything. She put a folder on the table between our cups and said, "I've been doing Gloria's personal books for 3 years. 6 months ago, I started finding things that didn't add up. Duplicate invoices. Payments from Kevin's company that don't match any service I can identify. I pulled the records. I ran the numbers." She paused. "Darlene, how long has she been doing this?" I said, "Longer than either of us." Vanessa had found the same trail from the other end. Where I had Kevin's business records showing money going out, Vanessa had Gloria's personal records showing money coming in. The amounts matched. The dates matched. And Vanessa had something I didn't. She had the duplicate invoices that Gloria had created for her own files. Fake invoices, typed on a template with the GK Consulting header, documenting services that were never performed. Gloria had generated them not for Kevin's business. Kevin had never asked for invoices, but for her own records, probably in case she ever needed to justify the income to a tax preparer. Vanessa set down her pen and looked at me and said, I watched that woman try to control Kevin through me 10 years ago, and I left. I didn't realize she found a more profitable way to do it through you. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain this time. Space. For the first time in 14 years, someone who had no obligation to me, someone I'd considered an adversary, was sitting across from me and saying, "I see it. I see what she did. You're not crazy." We built the case together. Vanessa brought the personal side documentation. I had the business side records. Together, we assembled a complete financial picture that would satisfy an IRS auditor. Phantom invoice analysis, deposit timing patterns. Proof that GK Consulting had no tax ID, no business registration, and no evidence of any service ever performed. 47 pages of reconciliation from my side, a banker's box of duplicate invoices from hers. 2 women, one who'd escaped Gloria's orbit and one who was still in it, sitting in a coffee shop with spreadsheets and silence and a shared understanding that needed no explanation. Gloria's 70th birthday was 6 weeks away. She'd planned a dinner at the family lake house, a big production, 22 family members. She'd moved the venue from the restaurant she'd originally booked to the lake house, and at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Later, I'd understand. The lake house was Gloria's stage. It was where she performed generosity, where she held court, where every Kavanaugh gathering happened on her territory and under her rules. She'd chosen it because it was the one place she felt untouchable. 6 weeks. I had 6 weeks to finalize everything, to make sure every number was airtight, to prepare for every deflection Gloria would attempt, and to decide what I was actually going to do with what I knew. The first 3 weeks were the hardest, because I had to keep being Darlene, weekend bookkeeper, dutiful daughter-in-law, invisible engine. I still did Kevin's books every Saturday. I still attended Gloria's Sunday dinners. I still sat at her table and ate her food and listened to her tell Lisa about the renovations planned for the new townhouse, the $410,000 townhouse, the one Gloria had handed over with a deed and a smile at the same brunch where she'd handed me a cleaning schedule. One Sunday, Gloria brought me flowers, a small bouquet of daisies from the farmer's market. She put them in my hands at the door and said, "I'm hard on you because I see myself in you." Her eyes were soft. Her voice was warm. She even squeezed my shoulder. For a fraction of a second, one heartbeat, I felt the old pull, the wanting, the desperate hope that maybe I'd misunderstood everything, that maybe the numbers were wrong, that maybe she actually cared about me in her own difficult way. Then I saw the laminated chore schedule pinned to her refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. My name in bold at the top. My duties listed by day, and the warmth drained out of me the same way it had 14 years ago at the kitchen sink, from the chest down, like a faucet had been opened. I drove home that night and met Vanessa at the coffee shop and finalized the timeline. If someone in your family has ever handed you a list of duties and called it love while handing someone else a check and calling it family, you're not crazy. That's not love. That's a staffing arrangement. Type cleaning schedule in the comments if you've been the unpaid everything in someone else's house. And if this story is hitting close to home, stay with me. Because what happened at that lake house is going to matter to you. The almost caught moment happened on a Thursday, 2 weeks before the birthday dinner. Kevin came home early. I had the spreadsheet open on the laptop in the kitchen. The 47-page reconciliation, with its columns of dates and amounts and cumulative totals that climbed past $500,000. I heard the front door, and my body reacted before my mind caught up. My hand hit the touchpad. I minimized the spreadsheet just as Kevin walked in. He came into the kitchen, kissed my forehead, and looked at the laptop screen, which now showed the QuickBooks dashboard. "Doing quarterly stuff?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Quarterly stuff." He grabbed a beer from the fridge and went to the living room and turned on the TV. I sat there with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. The spreadsheet was one click away. Every number, every trail, every piece of evidence of what his mother had done, hiding behind a minimized window. That night, I moved all the files to an encrypted folder. Vanessa had a copy of everything on a separate drive. Redundancy. Forensic accounting taught me that. If one record is destroyed, the truth survives in the duplicate. Vanessa and I met 4 more times over those 6 weeks. Always at the same coffee shop. Always at the same corner table. She was meticulous. She brought annotated records. She flagged discrepancies I'd missed, small ones, timing irregularities that suggested Gloria sometimes accelerated her payments when she knew a large expense was coming for Lisa. One month, Gloria had pulled $6,800 instead of $4,200, the same month she'd put a deposit on Lisa's master's program. Vanessa had the receipt from the university and the bank record from Gloria's account, dated 3 days apart. Vanessa told me something during our last meeting that I've thought about every day since. She said, "When I was dating Kevin, Gloria used to tell me exactly what to wear to family dinners. She'd call the morning of and say, 'Wear the blue dress, Vanessa, not the red one.' I thought she was being motherly. It took me 2 years to realize she was training me. By the time I left, I didn't know which of my preferences were mine and which were hers." She looked at me. "She's been training you too, Darlene. She's just been getting paid for it." The week before the birthday dinner, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and asked myself the question I'd been avoiding for 14 years. Why did I allow this? Not the money, though the money was monstrous. Why did I allow someone to treat me like staff in my own family? Why did I let her rewrite the pediatrician's records? Why did I skip conferences she told me to skip? Why did I sit at her table and eat her food and smile when she excluded me from her weekends? Why did I keep doing the books for free while she invoiced the company for my labor? I knew the answer. I'd always known it. My father taught me that being quiet and helpful was how women survived, and I'd loved my father so much that I'd turned his survival strategy into my identity. I'd become the woman who keeps her head down and does the work and doesn't complain, because complaining was a luxury my father never had, and if it wasn't a luxury for him, I didn't deserve it either. But my father survived. He didn't thrive. He didn't build. He maintained. And I'd been maintaining the Kavanaugh family for 14 years while they built everything on my back. The night before the dinner, I sat on the edge of my bed with my father's watch in my hand. The leather band was soft from decades of wear. The crystal was cracked in the same place it had always been cracked. I wound it even though it didn't need winding, the way he used to, because some rituals are about connection, not function. And I said to him, to the empty room, to myself, "I'm done being quiet, Dad. I'm done being helpful on someone else's terms. I think you'd understand." I put the watch in my pocket. I packed the 47-page reconciliation in a manila folder. I called Vanessa and confirmed she had the banker's box ready. And I went to sleep. Gloria's 70th birthday dinner was on a Saturday in September. The lake house sat on a hill above Lake Anna, about an hour south of Richmond, a white clapboard house with a wraparound porch and a dock that stretched into water so still it looked painted. Gloria had owned it for 30 years, bought it with the life insurance money from Kevin's father, who died when Kevin was 12. She talked about the lake house the way some people talk about church. It was sacred to her. It was where she was, most fully herself. 22 family members came. Kevin's Uncle Hank and his wife. Lisa and her husband Mark. 3 of Gloria's sisters. Cousins, spouses. A handful of older relatives I saw once a year and couldn't always name. The long dining table was set on the enclosed porch overlooking the water. Candles, cloth napkins, a catered meal from a restaurant in town. Gloria sat at the head of the table in a cream-colored blouse with pearl buttons, her silver hair pinned up, her smile wide and warm. She looked like a woman who had built something beautiful and wanted to admire it. I sat midway down the table, between Kevin and Maisie. Josie was on Kevin's other side. The manila folder was in my bag under the table. Vanessa was parked outside. She'd arrive at the moment we'd agreed on. Dinner moved slowly. Gloria made a toast to herself. Gracious, funny, self-deprecating in the way that very controlling people can be when they feel safe. Lisa gave a speech about how Gloria had always been the backbone of this family. Kevin raised his glass and said, "To Mom, the strongest woman I know." I raised mine. I didn't drink. I want you to understand something about what it felt like to sit at that table. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was finished. There's a difference. Anger has heat. Finished has none. I was a woman at the end of a very long calculation, and the numbers balanced, and there was nothing left to do but present the findings. That's what I was trained for. That's who I am. After the main course, while people were still in their seats with wine glasses half full and the evening sun turning the lake amber through the porch windows, I reached under the table and took the manila folder from my bag. I placed it on the table in front of Kevin. I didn't slide it. I placed it. Deliberately. Flatly. The way you place a document in front of a client when the audit is done and the numbers speak for themselves. Kevin looked at the folder. He looked at me. I said, "I need you to read this." My voice was steady. I'd practiced that steadiness in the mirror that morning, not because I was performing, but because I knew my body would try to shake and I needed to be in control of the instrument. This was a presentation of findings, not a breakdown. I would not give Gloria the satisfaction of calling me theatrical. Kevin opened the folder. Page 1 was the executive summary, the way I'd format it for a client at the firm. Total amount identified, $554,400. Source, Kevin Kavanaugh Roofing LLC Business Operating Account. Destination, personal checking account of Gloria M. Kavanaugh. Vehicle, recurring monthly payment of $4,200 to GK Consulting LLC. Status of GK Consulting LLC. No registration found in any state or federal business database. Services documented. None. Kevin read page 1 standing. He'd been half risen from his chair when he saw the folder, as if he might need to leave the table. By page 3, he sat back down. The candle nearest his elbow flickered from the movement, throwing a quick shadow across the linen. By page 5, the color had left his face. His skin looked like the inside of an eggshell, pale and thin and breakable. By page 12, he had to lean forward with his elbows on the table because his hands were trembling too much to hold the pages steadily. I could hear the paper shaking, a faint, dry sound like leaves against a screen door. The table had gone quiet, not because anyone understood what was happening yet, but because Kevin's face was doing something no one in this family had ever seen it do. It was collapsing, reorganizing. The mask of the easygoing son, the good provider, the man who said, "That's just mom being mom," was falling away, and underneath it was someone who was reading the mathematical proof that his mother had stolen $500,000 from him. Gloria watched him from the head of the table. I watched Gloria. Her hands were resting on either side of her dessert plate, her fingers lightly curled, the way a pianist's rest before the first note. Her smile didn't fall immediately. It held for the first few seconds, the way a building holds after the foundation has been pulled, just long enough to seem like it might survive. Then her eyes moved from Kevin's face to the folder to my face, and the smile crumbled. Not all at once. The corners of her mouth went first, then the lift in her cheeks, then the brightness in her eyes like lights being turned off in a house, room by room. "Kevin," she said. "What is that?" He didn't answer. He turned to page 15, where I'd placed the deposit timing analysis, the chart showing that every GK Consulting payment from his business account appeared in Gloria's personal account within 24 hours. I had color-coded it: green for the outgoing transaction, red for the incoming deposit. 132 green lines, 132 red lines, matched to the day. Lisa leaned forward. "What's going on?" Uncle Hank put down his wine glass. The stem made a soft click against the tablecloth. Aunt Patricia stopped mid-sentence in a conversation no one had been listening to for 2 minutes. I could feel the weight of my father's watch in my pocket, pressing against my thigh. A small, steady pressure, like a hand. The front door opened. The sound carried through the house, the creak of the hinges, the brush of the door against the jamb, and then footsteps on the hardwood, measured and deliberate. Vanessa walked in carrying a banker's box. She was dressed simply: dark blouse, slacks, no jewelry. She walked to the table and set the box down beside the folder, and the sound it made when it hit the wood, that dense, final thud of paper, receipts, invoices, 11 years of documented extraction. That sound became the loudest thing in the room. The wine glasses trembled. A fork slid half an inch on someone's plate. The candle flames dipped sideways as if the air itself had flinched. Gloria's face went white. Not pink, not flushed. White. The kind of white that starts at the jawline and moves upward, draining everything. I watched it happen. I watched the blood leave her face the way you watch water recede before a wave, because she knew Vanessa. She had hired Vanessa. She had given Vanessa access to her personal financial records, and now Vanessa was standing in her lake house on her birthday with a box that contained every duplicate invoice Gloria had ever created for a company that didn't exist. Gloria's right hand moved to her pearl buttons. She touched the top one, a tiny reflexive gesture, the way some people reach for a cross at their throat. Her fingers closed around nothing. Vanessa didn't sit down. She stood at the edge of the table with the lake behind her through the windows, the water going dark gold in the lowering sun, and said simply, "I'm Vanessa Cole. For the past 3 years, I've managed Mrs. Kavanaugh's personal finances. What's in this box is a complete set of duplicate invoices from GK Consulting, matched to deposits in Mrs. Kavanaugh's personal account. There are 132 invoices. Each one is for $4,200. None of them correspond to any service I can verify." She paused. Her voice was level, professional. The voice of a woman presenting findings, same as me. "I'm here because Darlene asked me to confirm her findings independently, and I can." The silence that followed was not the silence of surprise. It was the silence of recalculation. I could see it happening around the table. 22 people revising every story they'd ever been told about this family, about Gloria's generosity, about Lisa's townhouse, about Darlene's place, about who gave and who took and who was real. Uncle Hank's wife put her napkin down slowly, folding it once, then again, as if she needed something to do with her hands while her mind caught up. One of Gloria's sisters, Ruth, pressed her fingertips to her temples. Another, Diane, stared at the banker's box as if it were something alive. Gloria reached across the table for Kevin's arm. Her hand found his wrist, the way it had 1,000 times before, the automatic gesture of a mother who expects to be obeyed on contact. Her fingers were shaking. I could see it from where I sat, a fine tremor that made her rings catch the candlelight in quick, nervous sparks. "I can explain," she said. Her voice had the tone I knew well, the soft, wounded, "how could you doubt me" tone that had ended every conversation I'd ever tried to start. But this time the tone landed in a room full of numbers, and numbers don't respond to tone. Kevin looked at her hand on his arm. He looked at it for a long time. 3 seconds. 5. 7. I counted them by the ticking of my father's watch, which I swear I could feel through the fabric of my pocket. Faint and steady, marking time. Long enough that the whole table held its breath. Maisie's hand found mine under the table. Her fingers were cold. She squeezed once and held on. And then Kevin did something I had never seen him do in 14 years of marriage. He removed his mother's hand from his arm. He picked it up gently, the way you'd pick up something breakable, and he placed it back on the table and he said, "You'll explain to our accountant." Not to me. Our accountant. Not my wife in that moment. Our accountant. He was finally seeing me as what I'd always been, the professional who kept his world solvent. And he was telling his mother that the rules had changed and the person she'd been billing was now the person she'd be answering to. Gloria tried. Of course she tried. She looked around the table for allies, her gaze moving from face to face the way a searchlight sweeps a dark field, looking for something to land on. Her sisters wouldn't meet her eyes. Ruth was studying the grain of the table. Diane had turned her chair slightly, just a few degrees, but the angle said everything. Uncle Hank was reading a page from the folder that Kevin had passed to him, his reading glasses perched on his nose, his lips moving slightly the way older men's lips do when numbers are involved. His index finger traced the column of cumulative totals, pausing at each line, and I saw his eyebrows rise incrementally, a millimeter at a time, as the number climbed. Lisa had gone pale. Her husband Mark had his hand on her back, but his eyes on the box of invoices. His jaw was tight. He was adding things up, not on paper, but in his head, recalculating the net worth of his wife's gifts. "This is a misunderstanding," Gloria said. Her voice rose half an octave. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles whitened against the wood. "That consulting arrangement was something your father set up before he died. I continued it because it was how your father wanted to support me. Kevin's father had died 27 years ago. Kevin's roofing company had existed for 15. The consulting payments started 14 years ago, the same year I married Kevin and started doing the books. The math didn't just not add up. The math exposed the lie in real time, and every person at that table could do basic arithmetic. Dad's been gone 27 years, Kevin said quietly. His voice was hoarse. The payment started the year I got married. Gloria's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I heard the lake through the screened windows, a faint lapping against the dock pilings, steady and indifferent. A bird called somewhere in the trees beyond the porch. The world outside that room was continuing as if nothing had happened. Lisa spoke next. Her voice was small, barely above a whisper, the voice of someone who already knows the answer to the question she's about to ask. "Mom, the townhouse. The money for my master's degree. Was that—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Her hand was over her mouth. Mark's arm tightened around her shoulder. I could have said, "Yes, Lisa. Your $67,000 education and your $410,000 townhouse were funded by a phantom consulting company that extracted money from your brother's business while his wife did the books for free." But I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The spreadsheet was in Lisa's hands now, passed down the table by Uncle Hank, and she could read the numbers herself. Her eyes moved down the page. I watched them stop at the line for the month her master's program deposit was paid, the month the extraction had jumped to $6,800. Her breath caught. A small sound, the sound of a woman realizing the house she lives in was built on her brother's stolen labor. Gloria tried one more time. She turned to me. For the first time in 14 years, she looked at me directly, not past me, not through me, not at the version of me she'd constructed in her mind, the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who could be managed with a bouquet of daisies and a squeeze on the shoulder. She looked at me and said, "Darlene, after everything I've done for this family," I let the sentence sit. I let the room hear it. I let it hang in the air between the candles and the wine glasses and the cooling plates of food that no one was eating. everything she'd done for this family. The woman who'd taken $554,000 from her son's company using a fake business, who'd funded her younger child's lifestyle with her older child's labor, who'd excluded me from every circle while extracting my expertise, who'd called my grief theatrical and changed my children's medical contacts and handed me a cleaning schedule at the same table where she handed her daughter a house. This woman wanted credit for what she'd done for the family. I felt my father's watch ticking against my leg. I felt Maisie's hand still holding mine under the table. I felt the weight of 14 years of silence pressing against my teeth. Not demanding to be screamed, but asking, finally, calmly, to be spoken. "Gloria," I said, "I have done your son's books for free for 14 years. I have tracked every dollar that came in and went out of his company. I did it on weekends. I did it at 2 a.m. with babies sleeping on my chest. I caught errors that would have cost him clients. I prepared tax returns. I reconciled accounts. And while I was doing that, you were invoicing his company $4,200 a month for a consulting firm that doesn't exist." I paused. I let the silence hold. The candle between us burned without flickering. The lake was still. "You didn't do things for this family, you build them." She had no answer. The sentence landed on the table like the banker's box had, heavy and final. I watched her cycle through the stages. The denial had failed. The redirect to Kevin's dead father had been exposed. The appeal to family loyalty had landed in a room that was no longer listening. Now she was in the bargaining phase, and she had nothing to bargain with. She turned to Lisa, and Lisa pushed back from the table. The legs of her chair scraped against the porch floor, a sharp, cutting sound. She turned to her sister Ruth, and Ruth looked away, looked out toward the lake, toward the darkening water that reflected nothing back. She turned to Uncle Hank, and Hank took off his reading glasses and folded them carefully and set them on the table beside the spreadsheet and said, "Gloria, I think you need a lawyer, not a birthday cake." No one laughed. No one moved. The sentence sat in the room like a verdict. The dinner ended without dessert. The catered birthday cake, a 3-tiered vanilla cake with buttercream roses and "Happy 70th Gloria" written in gold script, sat on the kitchen counter untouched. The caterer packed it up in the same box it had arrived in. People gathered their coats and their children and left in clusters, speaking quietly, avoiding Gloria's eyes. Car doors opened and closed in the gravel driveway. Engines started one by one. Headlights swept across the front of the lake house, illuminating the white clapboard, the porch railings, the window where Gloria stood watching her family leave. Vanessa took the banker's box back to her car. She nodded at me once on her way out, at the threshold of the front door, with the porch light behind her. Not a triumphant nod. A serious one. The nod of a woman who understood what it cost to be in that room and what it would cost to leave it. Kevin and I drove home in silence. Not the silence of anger. The silence of two people sitting in the wreckage of something they both helped build and both failed to examine. The highway was dark. The headlights lit the road 60 feet ahead and no further. Kevin's hands were at 10 and 2 on the wheel, and he held it the way he'd held the pages of the spreadsheet too tightly, as if letting go meant falling. When we got home and the girls were asleep, Kevin sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd done his books for 14 years, the same table where I'd built the 47-page reconciliation, and he said, "I'm sorry, Dar. I'm sorry I didn't see it." I said, "You didn't want to see it." He nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He didn't say, "That's just mom being mom." He sat with it. And that was the beginning of something new between us. Not trust, not yet, but honesty, which is the material trust is built from. I stopped doing Kevin's books. That was the first thing. He hired a real bookkeeper, a woman named Trish, who charged $65 an hour and who was worth every cent because she was being paid, which meant her labor was visible, valued, and finite. The first Saturday morning, I didn't open the laptop. I sat on the porch with my coffee and didn't know what to do with my hands. 14 years of Saturdays, and I'd never once spent one without a spreadsheet. The emptiness felt strange. Then it felt earned. Then it just felt like morning. I stopped attending Gloria's family events. I stopped answering Gloria's calls. I stopped being the invisible engine that ran on love and guilt and the hope that one day, if I was quiet enough and helpful enough, I would earn my place. I didn't sue Gloria. I didn't report her to the IRS, though I could have. I didn't post anything online. I didn't make a public scene beyond what had happened at the lake house. I simply withdrew. I pulled my labor, my presence, my compliance, and my silence out of the Kavanaugh family machine, and I let gravity do the rest. Within 5 months, the consequences arrived. They arrived the way consequences do when you remove a load-bearing wall, not all at once, but in a series of collapses that each revealed how much weight that wall had been carrying. Kevin's business nearly failed, not because he was a bad roofer, because no one had ever managed the books except me, and the transition to Trish took time, and there were months of disorganized records and missed invoices and payment delays that I would have caught in my sleep. Invoices I would have sent on the 1st of the month went out on the 15th. A vendor payment I would have flagged as duplicate went through twice, costing the company $2,800. Kevin spent 3 weekends in a row at the kitchen table with Trish, doing the work he'd never watched me do. And one night he looked up from the laptop with his eyes red and his coffee cold and said, "You did this every Saturday for 14 years. I said, "Yes." He said, "I never once asked you if you wanted to." I said, "No, you didn't." The GK consulting payments stopped because Kevin canceled them. He called the bank on a Monday morning, the first business day after the birthday dinner, and put a stop on the recurring transfer, and for the first time in 14 years, $4,200 a month stayed in his company's operating account where it belonged. The effect was immediate. Cash flow stabilized, margins improved. The debt from the home equity loan Gloria had pressured Kevin into, the $90,000 loan that never made sense until you factored in the phantom consulting fees, that debt started being serviceable. Kevin made his first extra principal payment in November. Lisa stopped speaking to Gloria. This was the one I didn't expect. Lisa had been Gloria's favorite, the recipient of the $30,000 check, the $67,000 education, the $410,000 townhouse. Lisa had been the beneficiary of every dollar Gloria extracted from Kevin's company. And when Lisa understood that, when the spreadsheet made it undeniable that her lifestyle had been funded by her brother's stolen labor and her sister-in-law's free work, something in Lisa broke. She called Kevin 3 days after the birthday dinner and said, "I didn't know, Kevin. I swear I didn't know." And Kevin, to his credit, believed her. But Lisa couldn't look at the townhouse the same way. She told Kevin she walked through the front door every evening and saw the number, 410,000, as if it were written on the walls. She couldn't look at her diplomas the same way. She couldn't look at her mother the same way. She stopped calling. She stopped visiting. She stopped posting on Facebook about Kavanaugh women. And Gloria sat alone in the lake house. The house on the hill above Lake Anna, the house she'd bought with her late husband's life insurance, the house where she'd held court for 30 years. That house was expensive to maintain. The heating bill alone ran $1,200 a month in winter. The property taxes were $8,000 a year. The upkeep on a house that old with that much waterfront, the dock repairs, the roof, the plumbing in a structure built in the 1960s was a constant drain. And the $4,200 a month that had funded Gloria's life for over a decade, that pipeline was dry. I heard from Kevin's Aunt Patricia that Gloria had started calling family members asking for help with bills. Patricia said Gloria's voice on the phone was different, smaller, uncertain. the voice of a woman who had mistaken control for love and was discovering, too late, that control requires an audience, and she didn't have one anymore. Gloria called me once. It was a Tuesday evening, about 3 months after the birthday dinner. I was sitting at the kitchen table, not doing books, just sitting there with a glass of water and the quiet. My phone rang, and I saw her name, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger, not satisfaction, grief. I was grieving the mother-in-law I never had. The one I'd spent 14 years trying to earn. The one who might have welcomed me without a price tag. I let the call go to voicemail. She left a message. Her voice was careful, rehearsed, the way all her voices were rehearsed. She said she wanted to clear the air and that families go through rough patches and that she hoped we could move forward. She did not say sorry. She did not acknowledge the money. She did not mention the cleaning schedule or the spa weekends or the pediatrician or any of the 1,000 cuts she delivered over 14 years. She just wanted to move forward, which, in Gloria's language, meant she wanted me to resume my position as the invisible engine so the machine could start running again. I deleted the voicemail. I put my phone down. I went to the kitchen and made dinner for my daughters and helped Maisie with her math homework and read Josie a story about a bear who lived alone in a cave and was happy there. And I thought about how some stories are about the people who leave, and some stories are about the people who finally stop staying. Kevin and I started couples counseling. We go every other week to an office off Patterson Avenue, where a woman named Dr. Sato asks us questions neither of us is comfortable answering, and we answer them anyway. Kevin is learning to see me, not the version of me that does the books and manages the house and absorbs his mother's cruelty without complaint. The real me, the woman with a forensic accounting certification and a dead father's watch, and 14 years of silence she's learning to break. The marriage is not fixed. I want to be honest about that. You don't rebuild trust in a few months. But we're building something that wasn't there before, a foundation that's ours, not Gloria's. Kevin made a decision I didn't ask for and didn't expect. He took down every photo of Gloria from our house, not in anger. He did it quietly one Sunday morning while the girls were at church with Patricia. He put them in a box in the garage and he said, "When she earns her way back onto these walls, she can. But right now, I need our home to look like our home." It was the first time in our marriage he'd claimed our space as ours, not his mother's satellite. Spring came. The dogwoods bloomed along Monument Avenue the way they always do, extravagant and brief. And I sat on our porch on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and my father's watch in my palm. The leather band was almost transparent now, worn so thin by his hands and mine that you could see the grain of the leather like skin. I wound it. I don't know why I still do that. The watch keeps time on its own, but my hands need to do what his hands did. It's connection. It's continuity. It's the feeling of being held by someone who is gone, but whose lessons are still landing, even the ones that needed correcting. Maisie came out with a mug of coffee. Her own, the one she'd started making for herself on weekend mornings because she's 11 and becoming a person with habits and preferences and opinions about the world. She sat beside me on the porch step and didn't say anything for a while. The birds were loud. A cardinal sat on the fence post across the yard, its red so sharp against the green that it looked painted there. The neighborhood was waking up. A man 2 doors down was mowing his lawn, and the smell of cut grass mixed with the coffee steam and the cool air that hadn't yet turned humid. Somewhere down the block, a screen door slapped shut. A dog barked once and stopped. Then Maisie said, "Mom, I never liked spa weekends anyway." I looked at her. She was looking at the dogwoods. Her profile was Kevin's. The same strong jaw, but her eyes were mine, watchful, measuring, seeing more than she said. She'd known. For longer than I realized, she'd known that the spa weekends weren't about blood or tradition. They were about exclusion. And she'd carried that knowledge the way I'd carried mine, quietly, without complaint. Because she'd been watching her mother and learning, but she'd also learned the correction. She'd watched me stop. I put my arm around her. I didn't cry. I'd done enough crying in bathrooms and kitchens and dark bedrooms. What I felt was something lighter. Not happiness exactly, but the absence of a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. The weight of trying to belong to someone who'd never intended to let me in. The morning air moved across the porch and carried the smell of the dogwoods, sweet and faintly green. And I breathed it in, and it filled the space that the weight had left behind. Time passes differently when you're not performing. Seasons don't feel like stages. Mornings don't feel like rehearsals for someone else's script. I wake up now and the day belongs to me in a way it didn't before. I still do forensic accounting for the firm. I still read bank statements and transaction logs and look for the lies between the lines. But I don't do it at the kitchen table on Saturday mornings anymore. Saturday mornings are mine. Coffee, porch, watch. The sound of my daughters arguing about cereal in the kitchen. Kevin's voice, closer now, asking if I want more coffee, and meaning it. Gloria's lake house went on the market 2 months ago. Kevin told me. He heard it from Hank. She couldn't afford the upkeep. The heating, the taxes, the maintenance on a house that size with no consulting income to subsidize it. She listed it for $385,000, less than it was worth, because the market was soft and she needed the money. I don't know where she'll go. I don't know if Lisa will take her in. I don't know if she sits alone at night and adds up the numbers the way I did. If she sees the $554,000 for what it was, not cleverness, but theft, not family management, but extraction. I don't need to know. That's the part that surprised me most. I thought I'd need to know. I thought I'd need to see her diminished, to confirm that the consequences had landed, to feel the satisfaction of balance. But the truth is, the satisfaction came not from Gloria's fall, but from my own rising. From the moment I stopped being the invisible provider and became a person who was visible, to herself first, and then to everyone else. Last week I was unpacking a box in the closet, one of the moving boxes from when we rearranged the house, and I found the laminated cleaning schedule. Darlene's duties. Bold type, neat columns, Monday through Sunday. Gloria had printed it on cardstock and sealed it in plastic, as if it were meant to last forever. As if I was meant to last forever in that role. I smoothed it flat with my thumb. The lamination was still shiny. The paper inside hadn't aged at all. I walked to the desk in the hallway, the one where I keep important papers, and I opened the top drawer. My father's watch was there, coiled on a square of soft cloth. I placed the laminated schedule next to the watch and closed the drawer. Not as evidence, not as a trophy, as proof of who I used to agree to be, and as a reminder of what it cost to stop. I used to think that loving a family meant disappearing into it. I was wrong. Loving a family means being whole inside it. And if the family can't hold you whole, then you weren't part of a family. You were part of a system. And systems don't love you back. They use you until you stop running. I know some of you are listening to this and recognizing the pattern. Not the exact details, maybe not a cleaning schedule, maybe not a fake consulting company, but the architecture, the feeling of giving everything and being handed a list of duties in return, the feeling of being essential and invisible at the same time. The way you start to think maybe you're the problem, maybe you're too sensitive, maybe this is just how families work. It's not how families work. It's how exploitation works. And the only person who can end it is you. Not with a speech, not with a fight, but by stopping. By withdrawing the labor they didn't value until it was gone. This story has been told. One laminated cleaning schedule, one phantom consulting company, and one forensic accountant who finally audited the right books. If you've ever been the person doing the work while someone else took the credit and the cash, tell me about it. Drop your story in the comments. I read them. And if this is the first video of ours you've found, welcome. Subscribe, stay close, and I'll see you